Hey guys, welcome to the fourth and final video of our contract to closing course. So we've gone through the whole process from going under contract, getting our due diligence set up, handling requests, and moving forward to verify the repairs that have been done. And now the final chapter of getting this thing closed is finishing it out, going to the final walkthrough, and then the actual closing itself. All right. So that's what we're going to talk about here in this video. So as you're moving forward, we've done our repair verification. We talked about not doing that the day of closing, but before that. And the day of closing or the day before closing, we should be looking to do a final walkthrough. Ideally, the day of closing. All right. So if we're closing at 10 o'clock in the morning, maybe we do a final walkthrough at 8:30, 9 o'clock, something like that. It's important that you have a conversation with your buyer client that this is not a inspection, this is not a showing, this is just simply a walk through, not a walk around, sit down and relax. This is a walk through. And what I mean is, we're not trying to pick apart the house again. All right, it's too late for that. We're already through inspection period, due diligence period. We're already through all that. What we're doing is we're walking through to make sure the house hasn't burned down, that there's no major issues with the house, and I'll talk about some examples of that. And just verify that everything's still up and running as it was the day that you viewed it and you wanted to buy it. All right. So a couple of examples. When I say make sure the house hasn't burned down, I'm not kidding. All right. I have had it happen twice in my career. Once was a catastrophic fire, just destroyed the whole house. And the other was a fire that created a lot of smoke damage. All right. The one that was a catastrophic fire, yeah, we didn't buy the house, right? The buyer obviously backed out, and contractually, you're able to do that as a buyer if the house isn't in the same condition as when you viewed it. And obviously, a major fire would conclude that. So good thing we did a walkthrough, because if we had gone to closing and not seen that, you know, we'll let the lawyers fight it out, right? But who wants to go through that battle? So just making sure that we're doing that. The other one where there was smoke damage, the buyer did in fact end up buying that house, but it took obviously several more months where they did some repairs, remediation, and that sort of thing. And the buyer ended up actually still buying that house. Other examples, we've had cars drive through homes. Yep, that's right. A car drove through a home at one point. Those kind of things. Those aren't the norm, right? Those are the oh my gosh moments, but those aren't the norm. Normally, what we are looking for, though, on a walkthrough is making sure all the appliances that were supposed to be part of the contract, that those all are still there, that they're the same ones that were there previously. They had a nice $2,500 refrigerator, and now they've got some junky $500 one. That would be an issue that would need to be addressed before we close. So making sure all the appliances are there, any other personal property as well. Those chandeliers, making sure that chandelier that was hanging there is still the same one. That happens. So you want to make sure that as the sellers have moved out, they didn't take any of that extra stuff with them. The other thing that you are looking for is any significant damage from the seller moving out. You know, your buyers are going to do what they do, and we should talk to them about being reasonable. But if there's a couple of scratches on the wall or things like that, I mean, if I'm buying the house, I'm not going to make a big fuss over it. I might ask, hey, do you have the extra paint? I'll touch that up later. No big deal. But that obviously can happen when you're moving furniture around and bringing couches down the stairs and those kind of things. I don't really think that's a big deal, but some buyers will. And so it does need to be in the same condition as when they saw it. So maybe there's something there that the seller would need to come back and fix. But it's the big issues. They dropped the couch on the stairs and it ran into the wall, and there's a big hole in the drywall. Well, obviously, that's something we're going to need them to come back and get fixed. Um, what else? Big issues like just making sure the heating system is still working in the same manner. We've had that happen on both sides, being the listing agent and the buyer's agent, where you come in for the final walkthrough and all of a sudden the heating system isn't working. Yeesh, why? A couple of times it was, oh, they ran out of gas, propane. A couple of times it was the system had actually seized up, and the seller ended up paying like $16,000 for two new compressors for the house. Boy, oh boy, is that buyer glad they did a walkthrough, right? So making sure those kind of big systems are done. All right, so let's talk about what if you do find an issue? What if you find a $16,000 issue the day of closing? How does that work? Well, there's no easy answer to that. Every situation is a little different, but generally speaking, we're not closing unless we get something else signed off on in writing. And here's where I would highly recommend you have attorneys draw up whatever document. I wouldn't like to use another due diligence request form or anything like that. I'd like the attorneys to draw up these kind of papers, especially on the bigger issues like that. Um, it could be that we go ahead and close, but the seller holds money back in escrow. So we get them to agree in writing, and the attorney is going to hold back $20,000 in escrow to make these HVAC repairs. And then your buyer can still close, and that once the repairs are done, then the attorney would pay the contractor, and whatever money's left over goes back to the seller. It could be something like that, and we could still close the same day. The smaller issues, even a drywall repair or something like that, it's up to the buyer. But again, if it was me and I had movers coming or whatever, I wouldn't let that stop me from buying it. I would just work out some sort of deal again with an escrow or something like that. This is again where you can get into some issues of potential loan fraud though pretty quickly, where the seller's like, look, I'll just go to Lowe's, I'll buy you a $200 gift card to Lowe's, give that to you, and you can use that to make the repairs. Not unless the lender knows about it, and the lender knows about it in writing, and they say, okay, no problem, in writing, right? Because otherwise, that's loan fraud. Even a small amount like $200 going between buyer and seller, if the lender doesn't know, that's a problem. All right, so don't let that sort of stuff happen under your watch. But it's just a conversation. Try to keep people calm at all costs and keep them talking. But there is a lot of tension on those days of closing, right? So keep them talking, keep them working through it, but make sure you do those walkthroughs and you are finding out what's going on with the properties. If they don't want to do a walkthrough, you need to have them sign that professional services disclosure and have them write into that walkthrough, and then they initial that they waive it. All right. So make sure you do that every single time. And I'd also have an email saying we highly recommend you do a walkthrough, but you've decided not to, and have initialed the professional services disclosure. Just something proving that you did, in fact, ask them to do the walkthrough. What if we get back, just like we talked about with repair verification, what if we get to that point where they say, hey, Aaron, can you just go do the walkthrough for me? Nope, not going to happen. All right. Again, they might be flying in from out of town. They might be out of town and doing, signing their paperwork from somewhere else, and they did a mail away closing. Fine, but we're not going to verify everything. What we can do again is use your cell phone and go in there, do a video, do a FaceTime with them, take some pictures and send to them, and just say, here's what I found. Here's some video, here's some pictures, here's what I found. But I'm never going to say, yeah, it looks great, don't worry about it, it's no problem. Don't do that. Just take pictures and say, here's what I found. That's it. Okay. So that's the most you should ever do if they're not physically there for the walkthrough. All right. So let's talk about the closing itself. For the most part, the realtor's job is done at closing. For the most part, your main purpose in being there at closing is to verify that all the information has gotten through to closing. And what I mean is, let's say on the original contract there was no closing costs, but during the repair request we added $3,000 in closing costs. So those $3,000 should obviously be on the settlement statement, right? Well, somehow, some way, that information didn't get to the attorney or to the paralegal, and they didn't put it on the final settlement statement. you need to verify that before everybody's signed everything. So that's the sort of thing you're looking out for, making sure all the numbers look right, making sure the attorneys didn't make a mistake. One of the things as a new agent you need to know is that the professionals, the attorneys, the lenders that have been doing this 20 years, they make mistakes, and they make mistakes often. Why? Because they're human. I make mistakes all the freaking time, unfortunately. So you have to verify each other. You have to work together to try to help each other out. So look for the mistakes. Don't assume that just because they're a good attorney, they have everything done right. That's not always the case. The good attorneys make mistakes, but they immediately own it and they immediately fix it. The bad attorneys make mistakes and they blame someone else, right? So look for those mistakes. That's your job at closing. The other thing you're doing at closing is being supportive for your clients. You're there to help them. It is stressful. Man, if you buy a house yourself, you know what I'm talking about. It's a stressful time. You're writing a huge check. Oftentimes, it's a new chapter of your life. So a lot of things are changing. You're stressed out about maybe a new job. You're stressed out about having to move, and you've got 48 hours of hard labor ahead of you. All those kind of things. So just be aware that they're going to be stressed out oftentimes. So be light and breezy about things at closing. Try not to be too stuffy about it. You're there to support them. It's a great idea to bring them some sort of nice gift. We have some great tool bags at the office that you can purchase if you want. They're a really good closing gift. They have some tools and stuff they can keep in the house, and it's got the Weichert logo on it, and it's got a place for you to put your business cards. So it's something that they can keep seeing you and keep seeing your face as you're giving those out. I think that's a great idea. Some really cool gifts that people have done is they agree to buy pizza for the moving party. So oftentimes you find out from your client they're closing here on Thursday and they're moving. They're moving and their family and everybody's going to be there on Saturday helping them move in. We'll agree to buy them pizza. Say, hey, I'll buy the pizza. Just tell me when you want it. Any kind of specialties you guys like or whatever, and I'll bring the pizza over. It's a great idea because you bring them pizza, which they really appreciate. But guess what? You get to meet all their friends and family who think you're wonderful, and it gives you more referral opportunity, right? So there's those kinds of ideas. Just think about ways to get more referrals from these people. At this point, they know you, they like you, they trust you, everything's gone good. We're closing, and now it's time to ask for those referrals. All right. So give them some sort of closing gift to help with that. But then don't forget at closing to be bold and ask them for more referrals. Who else do you know? Who do you know that'll be the next to buy or sell? And they say, well, yeah, I'm not sure right now, Aaron. Oh, okay, come on. Who do you think might be the next to buy or sell? Like, get them to give you a name. It's a great way to get referrals. They like you at this point. Everything's wonderful. All right, so use going to closing as an opportunity to get more referrals. So, do you have to go to closing? No, you don't. But again, it's a great idea, especially when you're the buyer's agent, to go to closing with them. I highly recommend anytime you possibly can go to closing, go to closing. It'll really be helpful. It's a good experience for you. You get to know the attorneys a little bit more. Maybe you get to see the other agent, talk to them, have a good time. I don't know, but it's a really good idea to go to closing whenever you can. But do you have to be there? No, you don't. And it's okay if you're not. You just need to be very available during that time, be there on the phone to be supportive for your client. But we all have schedules and things going on. So if you just can't make it, it's okay. It's not complete negligence or anything like that because you're really not doing anything there at closing except verifying some information and asking for referrals. You can verify the information over your phone and email, so that doesn't really change, honestly. And of course, you can ask for the referrals over the phone and stuff as well. It's just always that face-to-face interaction is a better way to go. All right, so I think that'll help with your referrals if you're there in person and going above and beyond whenever it's possible. All right. So that'll conclude our contract to closing. We just closed down the house and we're all set. And we're rocking and rolling. So I hope these videos were helpful for you. 4 different steps of getting through the process. But just remember, the communication is key. Constant communication. Never assuming that the client knows what you're doing. Never assuming that the lender knows what you're doing. Never assuming the attorney's doing a good job. Always, always communicate, constantly contacting people to make sure that you have as smooth of closing as humanly possible. All right. Thanks for joining me on these videos, and hope you enjoyed. Thanks.